If Donald Trump is reelected, the repercussions will extend far beyond the next 4 years. One of the most significant and under-discussed consequences of a second Trump presidency would last for decades. A younger, stronger, and even more ultra-conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court. That's what we are going to be talking about in today's video. Welcome back to Addison Politics. I'm your host, Addison Voss. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're interested in political analysis and commentary from a liberal perspective. Let's go back for a minute and review the timeline of the Supreme Court for the past 7 or 8 years so we can set the foundation here. Donald Trump gets elected in 2016. Throughout the 2016 campaign, we were warned by Hillary Clinton and others that if Trump was elected, Roe v. Wade would be at risk. People, including a lot of Democrats, said, that's ridiculous, you're fear-mongering, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fast forward, Trump appoints 3 ultra-conservative and young justices to the Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch is confirmed on April 7, 2017, at the age of 49. Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed on October 6, 2018, at the age of 53. Remember that hot mess with the sexual abuse allegations involving Christine Blasey Ford and a few other women? Then you have Amy Coney Barrett confirmed on October 26, 2020 at the age of 48. Barrett's confirmation was also highly controversial because it occurred close to the 2020 election. Republicans famously blocked Obama from appointing Merrick Garland to the court in March of 2016. But they were okay with pushing Amy Coney Barrett through literally just days before the 2020 election. So Trump appointed 3 people to SCOTUS, more than any other president in recent history, and they are all under the age of 55, all ultra-conservative, and really 2 of those seats were stolen from Democrats. Okay, so the court now has a 6-3 ultra-conservative supermajority. And while Trump is president, they start right away issuing crazy decisions. They made it harder to challenge voting laws that discriminated against minorities. They allowed a Catholic agency in Philadelphia to participate in the foster care system, even though they refused to certify same-sex couples as foster parents. They limited the ability of unions to organize, and they struck down a New York gun control law. All absolutely crazy decisions, but the general public is still not really awake to just how deranged this Supreme Court is yet. Then, on May 2nd, 2022, the draft opinion in the Dobbs case overturning Roe v. Wade is leaked to the public and then ultimately affirmed in June. And everyone starts having a meltdown. How could this happen? How could they do this? Blah, blah, blah. And those of us that were paying attention the whole time are scratching our heads like, how could you not know? We've been telling you this would happen since the 2016 election, and you all made fun of us and called us hyperbolic. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, SCOTUS has continued on an ultra-right-wing rampage. They overturned Biden's student debt forgiveness program. They ended affirmative action in college admissions. They've chipped away at voting rights. You have all the ethical concerns with Clarence Thomas. Just in the past few days, we now know that Samuel Alito is allegedly an election denier because he flew Stop the Steal flags at 2 of his residences, but yet he's still going to be presiding over cases involving the January 6th insurrection. I could go on and on. These are just some of the more notable examples of the court being completely unhinged, illegitimate, and corrupt, in my opinion. Now let's talk about what Trump will do with the Supreme Court if he wins the election in November. It's very unlikely Trump would be able to add a 7th conservative justice to the Supreme Court, as none of the 3 liberal justices are expected to retire in the next 4 years. Thank God for that. However, Sonia Sotomayor will be 70 years old in June, and while that's still fairly young for the Supreme Court, anything could happen. The average life expectancy in the US right now is only 77.5 years old. I hate to be morbid, but life is unpredictable. Any of the liberal justices could get sick and have to resign or unexpectedly pass away. And if Trump wins, we could have a 7-2 conservative supermajority on the court. While that's not likely to happen, it's not impossible, and we should acknowledge that. But let's talk about what's actually more likely to happen if Trump is reelected, and unfortunately, it's not a lot better. Clarence Thomas, who is 75, and Samuel Alito, who is 73, both will likely retire if Donald Trump is reelected. Trump will replace them with the youngest and most extreme right-wing people he can find. Trump has said this in interviews. He's going to be looking for candidates who are as young and conservative as possible. And guess what? He has plenty of people to pick from. While he was president, he appointed 234 judges to the federal judiciary. That's more than any other president in modern history. Trump and his people have been closely watching these judges. They're paying attention to who was willing to bend the law and make decisions that align with the conservative agenda. Trump doesn't want judges who are neutral arbiters of the law. He wants judges who are going to push forward his crazy right-wing agenda at all costs. And Trump will not make the same mistakes he made in his first term. He's not going to be looking for people with Ivy League educations or accomplished resumes. Part of the reason why the current Supreme Court hasn't been even more outrageous, if you can believe that's possible, is because Brett Kavanaugh has been surprisingly moderate on some issues. I put moderate in air quotes because he's not really moderate, although the media coverage makes you think he is. But he's been less willing to sign off on some of the most insane legal interpretations that his other colleagues have been more than happy to endorse. In a second Trump presidency, he's not going to appoint someone like Brett Kavanaugh. He's going to appoint people that have no limits, no morals, no ethics, that will choose partisan politics over and above all else. There's nothing in the Constitution that says Supreme Court justices have to be judges, or technically even attorneys at all. Trump could look to appoint some of the more extreme Republicans in Congress, for people like Josh Hawley, for example, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, even Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's technically possible. And he's not going to pick people in their late 50s if he can help it. He's going to appoint people in their 40s. We are already stuck with a conservative Supreme Court for decades thanks to Donald Trump's first term. There's nothing any Democratic president in the foreseeable future is going to be able to do to change the ideology of this Supreme Court, and that's already so grim to think about. But if Trump wins re-election, now we are talking about 30, maybe even 40 years, all of our lifetime basically, with an even more ultra-conservative court than we have now. Abortion rights, access to contraception, voting rights, gay rights, racial justice, the ability for our administrative agencies in the federal government to function, things like making sure we can breathe our air and drink our tap water, and that companies can't abuse us in the workplace. I could go on and on with examples. If you care about any of that, Donald Trump cannot get reelected and he cannot make any more appointments to the Supreme Court. Joe Biden needs to start talking about this. Democrats need to start talking about this. We need to make this a front and central issue in the 2024 election. Americans overwhelmingly don't want a MAGA court. Approval of this Supreme Court is at an all-time historic low. Democrats need to make the case to the American people. We already know that abortion rights is a winning issue for Democrats. Explain to the American people it is because of Donald Trump Roe v. Wade was overturned. If he becomes president again, he will make the Supreme Court even more extreme. Birth control access is on the chopping block next. Stay tuned for that video I'm working on. And the Supreme Court will take away more of your freedoms and rights if Trump is in the White House. Democrats need to make this a campaign issue and make this case to the American people because it is an existential threat and possibly the most important issue of the 2024 election in my opinion. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week.